What is up, everybody? This is Keith Jamison. I go by Gator Guy 231 across the DFS industry, and we are back for another 3-game EPL slate this Saturday, February 27th. I am excited to go over. This one's tough, guys. I'm just going to come out and say it. This is a tough slate, tough pricing. You know, normally I can make a lineup in like the first 3 to 4 minutes of sitting down. Like, oh, okay, this makes sense here. This makes sense there. All right, here's the pivot points. And this one, I like sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes. Like, man, I don't know where I want to go. But I have some picks, have some ideas, finally made a holder that works, I think. We'll see, right? But looking forward to the slate, looking forward to talking to you guys. I think it's a difficult slate, and I do think that gives an advantage to those of us that are paying attention, which is you, because you subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. And if you haven't, the bottom right of that screen is your time to subscribe. So hit that button. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate the support coming from the DFS soccer world and those that are new to it. It's a phenomenal sport. I hope that you're enjoying it and all the content that Mayo Media Network is bringing. Also, if you want to get access to it on your podcast station, make sure you search Daily Fantasy The Mix, part of the Mayo Media Network, available on all the podcast channels that you could find, Spotify, all those things. Just search for it. And then finally, if you want more from me, if this video doesn't tire you of me, check out FSIDFS.com. Search it on your YouTube channel. We have so much content dropping there too. We would love for you to join and check out what we've got in our community as well. All right, let's jump into the games. And to jump in, we first need to look at the odds and just get an idea of where we're going. There are some low totals and no big favorites. The first game of the slate, West Brom hosting Brighton. Brighton is the biggest favorite of the slate at -102. This is a whopping 2.25 total, which, let's be real, it makes sense. Brighton's been dominating games and just can't put the ball in the back of the net. So we'll see here. Big Sam is going to let West Brom play defensive, and I really think there could be some peripheral scoring for Brighton. Second game is the biggest total of the slate. We've got Leeds +127 hosting Villa. That is a 3 total. And the final game, this is the nap time game. If you just don't fall asleep when lineups come out. Make sure that you got everybody playing. But if you fall asleep when the game started, nobody's going to blame you. But we've got Newcastle hosting Wolves. Newcastle is home +266, Wolves +127, a whopping 2.25 total with juice going on the under. So let's talk about the slate and how we're going to play this DFS-wise with these low totals. The first guy into my lineups, and I think the most exciting player on the slate, is Rafinha of Leeds United. Since coming to the EPL, Rafinha has been absolutely phenomenal. He's been so good that Leeds might struggle to keep a hold of him this summer. Already some big guys, big teams are circling the wagons, and here's why. Let's just look at DFS-wise. He scored last week versus Southampton, 18.7 DK. That's one of his worst floor games of the recent, last months. Let's look at the rest of the games. Versus Wolves, no goal, no assist. 24.5 DK, 13 crosses, 6 shots assisted, 4 shots. Wow. Arsenal did get an assist on the route to 20.4 versus Crystal Palace, no goal or assist, 13.6 DK. Versus Everton, scored a goal en route to 26.5. Versus Leicester, an assist on the way to 15.2. Goal and assist versus Newcastle, 26.7. You get the picture. Rafinha is an absolute stud and a guy, forward so often in DFS decides the money. And I think realistically on this slate, you're going to have the likes of Rafinha, Pascal Gross, and Jack Grealish if he's in, and you only can play 2. I guess you can play 3. I really only see in the way that I want to build with not going overly punty. I think defender, I will get there. I think defender you can punt. But, I do think there's some floor guys in the mid-tier of midfield that you'll want. So I think that this is a slate where you get to pick 2. And I think, in my opinion, is that at forward is where I want to pay up for my floors, because honestly, I love the next guy. Probably is the second, lock of the slate for me, which is Pascal Gross. Look, West Brom is going to love to sit back and invite pressure. That's how Big Sam likes to play. Go for the guard draw, and if he sees the team overcommit, hit them on the counter. That's Big Sam football at West Brom. And Brighton has been struggling to score, and when they struggle to score, it means that Pascal Gross just goes absolute bananas with peripherals. In the last 3 games, he has 16, 16.6, 15.1. Only the 15.1 had an assist. He got 9.4 DK versus Liverpool in a tough matchup, 25.1 versus Spurs, 17.3 versus Fulham. Pascal Gross has an unbelievable DFS floor and a guy that I want to build around, especially in this matchup. So I got my 2 forwards. I spent a ton of money, but I got my 2 forwards and I got 2 phenomenal floors up top. Now, I think if you want a little pivot, I think Pedro Neto, great young player for Wolves. The issue with Pedro Neto and why I likely will not be on him is that he splits sets with Jamison, who's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about here in a minute. But Rafinha is on a set monopoly. Neto is on a set monopoly. Gross is on a set monopoly. Neto, not a set monopoly. And honestly, Newcastle's playing a little bit more open, expansive football. So I just think that the matchup for Gross and for Rafinha is just a little bit better. So I prefer those 2 over him. If you want to punt, if you want to go up to Jack Grealish and you just can't find the money, look, it's risky because you might not have another forward you can play in the last game. But Joel Ellington from Newcastle at 4,000, Callum Wilson's out, Andy Carroll's not that good, and Dwight Gale is just, we've known for a long time that Dwight Gale just isn't that good. So I think Joel Ellington at 4,000 is very viable, especially if he starts. He might not play 90, but you're rolling the dice because you better have some pivots ready, because if not, you might take a 0 at that position or have to play Joel Ellington not starting and just hope they gets in the game. That's tough. All right, let's go to midfield. At the midfield, I think Jack Grealish, obviously, Jackie Cavs, if you remember from the first video, one of the best floors in the EPL. He's been on sets. He missed this last week's game. We saw Villa struggle without him, but when in, Jack Grealish is just absolutely phenomenal. Look, Leeds is without Calvin Phillips, their best midfielder, one of the better defensive midfielders in the EPL. We've seen them struggle to, like, they did look good versus Southampton, but Southampton does a lot to play for. Villa does. I think Jack Grealish just could really, really give them problems, assuming he's healthy. That's the big thing with Grealish. When he's healthy, Jack Grealish plays 90 minutes week after week. But look, I think I have Gross and Rafinha ahead of Grealish. But look, if someone wants to argue with me, like, it's not going to be a long argument. It's going to be, yeah, I get it. Jack Grealish draws fouls, takes shots assisted, takes corners. Like, what more do you want? And it's a great total. So if you want to stack Rafinha and Jack Grealish together and miss Pascal Gross, like, I get it completely. After Grealish, I think Matthias Pereira, I talked about him last week. It's just a phenomenal player. He really needs a move to a bigger club, but I thought the performance versus Burnley was absolutely sensational. They went down a man, I think 30 minutes in. Matthias Pereira still finished with 17.8 DK floor points, 6 shots, 3 shots assisted, 5 crosses. Looked absolutely phenomenal. He's on a set monopoly for West Brom. Look, Brighton is by no means world beaters. My concern with Pereira, and the only drawback I can give Matthias Pereira at all, is I think that West Brom might not have the ball a ton because Brighton's just been so kind of ball dominant. But that said, look, his floor is phenomenal. He's put up, let me just pull it up real quick. The game that I just keep going back to is versus Manchester City, where they lose 5-0. Matthias Pereira still puts up 9 4 points. So that should tell you a lot about his quality and how good of a DFS play he is. All right, here comes the boring plays. But look, sometimes boring floor plays make us money in DFS. And first off is Grandpa João Moutinho. Wolves fans will probably call him the ageless wonder, but João Moutinho just keeps showing up. And look, because he's on splits corner kicks with Pedro Neto for Wolves, he is going to be in our lives still. Let's just look at the last few games. 7.4 floor points versus Leeds, 8.2 versus Southampton, 12.6 versus Leicester. He scored his only goal of the season. He only has 1 goal, no assists this season versus Arsenal for 17.1. But look, those performances at 5.7K as a slight favorite versus a Newcastle team that in the past we've seen them be more defensive. Look, I'm never crazy about this type of play, as you can see by my tone. But on this slate, I think it makes a ton of sense. Jonjo Shelvey is another player similar to João Moutinho, just is a little bit more mobile, does a little bit more in terms of like other stats, shoots a lot more than João Moutinho. But Jonjo Shelvey, Ryan Fraser's fallen out of favor for Newcastle. Jonjo Shelvey's on a monopoly of set pieces. He's only 5,100. And a game, look, that Newcastle needs to look here and go, look, we can get a point, Wolves at home. So I think like Jonjo Shelvey as a kind of a salary saving, high floor player there. All right, defender. Whew. defender is gross, and not Pascal gross. It's just gross. I almost don't want to bring anybody up, just to be real with you. But, I begrudgingly will give you one defender I'm going to keep my eye on, and that's Dan Burn. So Steven Alzate has started as left wing back for Brighton in the last few games and just given them absolutely nothing. He subbed off, I think it was either at halftime or like 50 minutes. They moved Dan Burn up, and as soon as Dan Burn went up, he tossed in 8 crosses and got 3 shots assisted in the span of like 40, 45 minutes. He's on sub 4K. Look, if he's playing a wing back position for Brighton, and you'll know that if you don't just look at count the number of center backs. And if you see 3 other center backs and then Dan Burn, he's a left back. So I think he's about the only guy. Like, I don't want to pay up. And then, outside Dan Burn, I might as well just go all the way down and just pick 2 guys that are in. I think that this might be that type of slate. I just haven't seen a defender that really jumps out at me. Obviously, lineups can change that. Finally, goalkeeper. Look, I'm not going to give you any names again either. We're almost to the end of this, I promise. But I'll just say this. My strategy over and over, I'm going to keep drawing in your heads. Start with the lowest keeper. Look, Sam Johnstone at home versus Brighton, who's struggling to score but might get a lot of shots. Like, that could be a fine play. And then just above him, you got Darlow from Newcastle. Newcastle's a different team at home. I used to be even better when they had fans, but they still play well at home. So, those are 2 that, I toyed around with right away. But if all of a sudden you finish your lineup and you love it and you have the salary and you can move all the way up and you prefer one of those goalkeepers, like, go for it. Goalkeeper is the highest variance position in DFS soccer. And that's why sometimes when you get large salary disparities, it just makes sense to go down and spend that money on other players that have better floors. Guys, that's going to do it. I don't have any bets here. Make sure you tune in tomorrow or whenever this drops, but look in the feed and you will see EPL picks on the Mayo Media Network. And they're phenomenal. I loved watching the show last week. It's a must listen for me. So make sure you check that out too. And that's going to do it. So once again, if you want to find more of my content, check out the FSI DFS YouTube channel where you can find, all sorts of hoops, soccer, everything that you could want. And finally, if you want just more unbelievable coverage, just cannot just get over how much amazing stuff drops on Mayo Media Network, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. We really do appreciate Keith, aka 231. See ya.